Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. 3 U.S. service members killed in Jordan recently. So many others wounded. As tensions in the Middle East keep heating up, and Iran becomes more and more belligerent by the day, aided and abetted by all of that money that Joe Biden has uncorked for the Iranian regime. It's getting awful. Today, a reporter asking John Kirby at the White House about what comes next.
It has been 3 days since the attack in Jordan that killed 3 service members. The president said yesterday that he had decided how to respond, but we haven't seen any public action. Well, at least publicly, we haven't seen any action. So with every day that passes and no response, are you missing an opportunity to signal resolve?
I think we signal resolve pretty well. And as I said the other day, we'll respond on our own time, on our own schedule. And we'll do that.
Joining me now to discuss all of this is a military veteran, Green Beret, a candidate for Congress in the state of Washington, and a man whose late wife was also a military service member who died fighting ISIS in Syria. Joe Kent is joining us now. Sir, great to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Give us, I saw your interview. First and foremost, if people haven't been following Tucker Carlson's product, you should. Joe Kent just did a great interview with Tucker, so I highly recommend it. But let me just ask you here, what do you make of this? We have service members who were just killed, and the White House keeps claiming, "Oh, we'll get back to them. We're gonna let Iran have it. We're gonna have some sort of answer to this," and yet it keeps remaining unclear. What do you make of this?
It's just more of the same from the Biden administration. At the same time, we've left our troops in these extremely vulnerable situations, spread throughout Iraq, spread throughout Syria. They've been attacked over 160 times. We just lost 3, and as you pointed out, numerous that have been wounded. We haven't removed those troops. They're still there. They're still within reach of the same Iranian proxies that conducted the attack. But at the same time, we still haven't responded. And more importantly, I would say Biden is still not cutting off the funding going to Iran. We're still funding the government of Iraq. I hope people understand that when Biden says this attack was conducted by Iranian militants operating from Syria and Iraq, that they understand it's a long way of saying the Iraqi government. And this is what we directly funded these militias that attacked and killed our troops. So the message is that we are spread thin, we're vulnerable, and we are going to continue to make the same mistakes we've been making for over 20 years in the Middle East.
So I have a lot of questions about, and I've just, I'm wondering why it is that we have troops in these positions. Now, we do hear from members of Congress that, it's important we project our strength out so we keep people from attacking us here and we help bring stability to the region. But it doesn't seem like the region's getting any more stable. I'm not sure what American goals are being served by having troops in these vulnerable positions.
That's exactly the question that Americans should ask their elected officials. When the elected officials say something like, well, they're guaranteeing security, the obvious question is, well, how's that working out? All we're doing by being in these locations is giving our enemies options. I mean, if you look at the way the Iranians fight, they fight through proxies, whether it's Iraqi militia groups, Syrian militia groups, Hezbollah, Houthis, whatnot. And they use proxies, and in order for proxies to be effective, they have to be able to reach their targets. We do our enemy a favor by putting our troops in these situations. So really, our troops are being left there. We knew they were going to be attacked. They had already been attacked. So they're essentially bait. And you have a lot of people in Washington, D.C. that want to expand this war to Iran. There's been this desire, too, to topple Assad for many years. So we leave our troops there. And then when they do get killed, we say that's not justification to pull them out. That's justification to send in even more troops. Potentially, if you listen to the Lindsey Grahams of the world, that's even a justification to expand this war onto Iranian soil. It's really just the gambler's fallacy we've had in the Middle East for the last 20 plus years. Like, nothing's worked so far, but if we keep doing the same thing, maybe it'll work out this time.
When I saw that there was a drone strike that killed three troops and injured so many others, you can't help but be reminded of the Beirut bombing back in 1983. A much bigger death toll, 241 U.S. Service members, most of them Marines, killed in the Beirut bombing. After that, Reagan pulled our troops out of Lebanon to try and get them out of harm's way. Should that be instructive for us now?
I think so. I mean, Ronald Reagan was not weak on national security and foreign policy, but he also wasn't foolish. And he realized, hey, this is diminishing returns. What are we gaining by being in Beirut? Hezbollah clearly controls the situation. They killed Marines. They kidnapped Americans, the chief of station of the CIA. Let's get our people away from the proximity of our enemy, and then we'll have greater options. And that is 100% the case here. And then economically, we need to go after all the money that Iran has access to,
Right.
starting with the government of Iraq. I mean, that's our biggest embassy overseas. We give them billions of dollars, and they're literally funding the proxy groups that are killing our troops.
It's maddening to me that Biden it keeps telling us he's going to get all of this under control when he's the one who's been giving these organizations all this money. Iran has access to at least $50 billion more now than it did before Biden became president. And they've quite obviously used that to commit acts of terror across the Middle East and, of course, against our own troops. It's got to drive you crazy to hear from him.
It does. That's exactly right. I mean, look, Iran's been a problem for a while. Trump had them pretty well contained because he cut off a lot of the economic power they had. He was starting to pull back a lot of our commitments in the region. The Abraham Accords really helped, but isolating the money is absolutely key. But the second Iran gets access to money, Biden comes in, unfreezes a bunch of their money, cuts off U.S. energy independence. So now Iran's got even more money and more leverage. Then the Iranians have the ability to fund their proxies. And we've seen what they've done immediately. They funded Hamas's attack against Israel. And so now the Palestine issue is back front and center. That issue was isolated thanks to the Abraham Accords. And then now the Houthis. I mean, I spent some time in Yemen, and the Houthis were a local militia that was
Yes.
kind of a problem in Yemen. They didn't have the ability to affect international shipping on the Red Seas, but thanks to the money that Biden gave the Iranians, now the Houthis have advanced drone technology and ballistic missiles that they can shoot at Israel and at our ships.
Right, and the Houthis in particular, remember, it was Trump who put them on the terror list, and then Biden removed them. Biden took them off the designated terror status list. And so what I don't understand about any of this is unless you're actively trying to hurt the United States and his interests, why would you do that? Why would you even begin to do something like that?
You can't justify it. You can't say that you have the best interest of American security in mind when you're directly funding our enemy who is killing American service members. I mean, and then leaving our American service members in the region to be attacked by these militias that we are directly funding. It's absolute insanity. Every American should be furious that we just lost 3 service members defending the Syria, Iraq, Jordan border
Yes.
while our border is wide open. I mean, that just speaks to where Biden's priorities are. Anybody can come into our country, fentanyl can kill our citizens, but we must deploy our military to the Middle East. Like, it does not make any sense unless you're trying to hurt the country.
It's totally insulting. It's totally insulting, and we're subjected to it constantly. Now, having said all of this, you are still for, if people kill American troops, they deserve to die. There needs to be some sort of response, even if it was foolish to have the troops there in the first place.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. We should strike back. What we shouldn't do is allow Iran to dictate the terms. If we leave our troops in these positions, we're playing to their strengths. They're going to use their proxies. We should remove our troops from their reach, and then the Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria, Iranian Quds Force officers, they are free game. I'm against us striking the Iranian mainland because that will just strengthen the Ayatollahs, that will rally the Iranian people around that regime. There's enough Iranians spread out and enough Iranian proxies spread out throughout the Middle East that we can strike at a time and place of our choosing.
Yes.
Let them take a victory lap and say they kicked us out of Iraq and Syria and then bomb the heck out of them back into the Stone Age. I mean, Trump did this very, very well when he killed Qasem Soleimani, who was soaked in American blood. And,
Yes.
and quite frankly, nobody thought that anyone would ever touch Qasem Soleimani, and that knocked the Iranians back on their heels. We have options like that.
And he was their terror czar. He was the guy who was directing all of the terrorist activities through these proxy groups like the Houthis all across the Middle East. Trump takes the guy out. It quiets things down in Iran. And in fact, if I remember correctly, which I do, at the time, Joe Biden condemned the strike on Soleimani because he said it would make things worse in Iran. But instead, it's Joe Biden who's actually overseeing just a hurtling towards disaster in the Middle East.
That's exactly right. I mean, Biden, the couple retaliatory strikes that he took before the attack in Jordan were essentially empty warehouses in southern Baghdad, just south of Baghdad. Maybe I think we killed a couple security guards that were affiliated with the Iranian-backed militias, but it was all for show. Trump took one shot once, and he killed two top terrorists, Abu Mahdi Mohandas and Qasem Soleimani, and that spun the Iranians back on their heels, and we had relative peace. Also because of the economic pressure that Trump put on Iran. But this can be done. The step one is for us to just get our guys out of there so they can't get hit anymore.
The economics of it are also important. So I was looking the other day at the and this may be a product of your conversation with Tucker, but I started thinking about it, that the amount of fuel, crude oil, that Iran sells to China is immense. 90% of all of Iran's exports of crude oil are to China. China, yes, on the other hand, in terms of on the import side, about 10% of all the crude oil they import is from Iran. If we were to engage in an all-out war with Iran, to include strikes on Tehran, which the White House seems to be suggesting that that's not going to happen, but were that to take place, that would really put an immense energy crunch on China, which is a good way to invite a world war, isn't it?
It most certainly is, and that's another reason why I'm very much against us broadening this war. And then look, I mean, we would get sucked, I think, further into a conflict if we start bombing Iran. And then right now we're spread very thin. I mean, we've got our military deployed all over the Middle East, securing Middle Eastern shipping lanes, and then we've got our military industrial base committed heavily to this fight in Ukraine. So we're not in really much of a position right now to be encouraging more and more conflict. I think we got to get serious and prioritize. We're a Pacific power. We need to refocus on the threat that China poses. And we really need to worry about our own southern border, the ramifications for what comes next, in particular what Biden's done with our energy sector and our military industrial base.
Yes.
We are not in a strong position right now at all.
Joe Kent, should you prevail and get to Congress, what is your intention? What are you going to do in terms of changing the psyche within Congress about these issues?
First and foremost, I mean, Congress has got to get serious about securing our own border. And we've had 118,000 Americans killed by fentanyl. Nothing else really takes priority until we get that border secured. But then as far as national security goes, we've got to be pragmatic. We cannot be the world's policeman. We can't continue to stay bogged down and overextended in places, like Iraq, Jordan, and Syria. So a more pragmatic foreign policy where we're actually putting the American people first, I think, is absolutely essential. And then having, the executive branch in our national security state rely on diplomacy and rely on economic strength. This is something that I think President Trump did a very good job with, keeping us out of wars, but using the weight of our economic power to influence the situation. And U.S. energy independence is absolutely essential. I mean, if you look at what's happened since we killed off U.S. energy independence, we've had the world's worst actors essentially get a pay raise. Like Vladimir Putin now has enough money in the bank to go and invade Ukraine. Iran starts acting up again. I mean, we've got to get back to competing on that world market.
That's right. Yeah, increasing energy production tenfold it's the closest thing we have to a panacea for so many of these issues. We could get so much back on track by doing that very thing. Joe Kent, really appreciate your time. Best of luck to you, and look forward to talking to you again in the future, sir. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. Joe Kent, again, candidate for Congress in Washington's 3rd District and an American combat veteran. Let's go to the phones. I've got Victor calling in from Rockville, line 1. Victor, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hey there, Vince. I just wanted to chime in and say that I'm really a little antsy about the idea about people trying to get Joe Biden to do something about what just happened, because the last time we lost troops, he killed an entire family of people that were friendly to the U.S., including 7 children. So having him do anything sounds like rolling the dice.
Right. When we lost 13 Americans during the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the administration responded by bombing, doing a drone strike on 10 civilians. There was an aid worker, 7 children. It was a guy, I believe he was loading a water container into his car or something, just decimated by a drone strike. The Biden administration ordered out of political expedience. They thought the way out of this is to bomb something, and it was a complete disaster.
Yeah, so the best he probably can do is nothing. Incidentally, we love you lots, but I wish you could bring Mary back sometimes.
Don't miss Mary. I was just talking to her this week. Hopefully we'll try and get her on at some point. I love Mary Walter. She's the best. Thank you, Victor. I appreciate the call. Let's see here. Well, coming up, I do have some behind-the-scenes, well, actually undercover. Behind-the-scenes is the wrong word. Undercover video for you. It involves illegal immigrants. This is not the first time we've seen this. Illegal immigrants showing up at an American airport. American citizens, including lawmakers, would like to get a closer look, and then they're manhandled by authorities who are trying to protect foreign nationals who are breaking our laws. The details on that moments away. Good afternoon. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Exclusive video appears to show migrants tucked away in a hidden room under military guard at major U.S. airport. That's the headline from the Daily Caller News Foundation today in a story that broke just before we went to air. A video exclusively obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation appears to show a U.S. service member guarding a room chock full of illegal immigrants at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Republican State Senator Colton Moore, who is the vice chairman of the Georgia Freedom Caucus, took the video Tuesday night, last night, told the Daily Caller that he learned of the hidden room full of migrants through a whistleblower at Atlanta's airport. Okay, so somebody apparently who works at the airport says, we've got a ton of illegal immigrants we're keeping here, and we're keeping it a secret even from state officials. They are not aware of what's happening in their own state. And so they contact their state senator and say, you've got to know about this. Here's what's happening. The whistleblower noticed an influx of illegal migrants coming through the facility in recent months. In the video, there appears to be a uniformed soldier guarding a room full of migrants. These are illegal foreign nationals, and volunteers with a group called Team Libertad, which boasts of helping migrants travel on its social media accounts. Quote, we're all getting them flights to where they need to be, a man who identified himself as a volunteer from Team Libertad says in the video. These are just recently documented travelers getting released from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, getting to where they need to be. There's people that they get dropped off here from ICE detention with no help, the man adds. Team Libertad, which is part of a program run by the nonprofit Inspiritus, greets migrants at the Atlanta airport and then accompanies them to their gates, according to a sign-up page the organization uses to recruit volunteers. Migrants who come to the U.S. illegally can fly commercially even without IDs. The Transportation Security Administration accepts a number of alternate forms of identification that include arrest warrants and notices to appear in court. Amazing. Those are privileges not afforded to you. Can't use your arrest warrant to travel. It's not clear why there appeared to be a military member whose branch affiliation is unclear guarding the room. In a statement to the Daily Caller News Foundation, a spokesperson for the Georgia National Guard said, quote, they're not aware of the incident in question or any such activity involving the Georgia National Guard at the airport. The Pentagon, for its part, did not respond to requests for comment. All right, so some of the audio here for you. This is the state senator. He is asking some questions here about what is going on inside of this room. They run into, again, a member of the military. It looks like a guy who's in a military uniform who's guarding the door. He's not guarding it very well. He's a little dumpy, and he's sitting in like a desk chair by the door doing his job of, I don't know what, keeping elected officials away or something. So the elected official, the state senator, starts asking some questions of the volunteer at the door. There's a little bit of the audio of the video of this undercover video. The video, when I say undercover, it's being captured by a cell phone, which is clearly being held by someone's side, so as not to indicate that they're actually recording, at least for a portion of this.
All over the place.
Where are they coming from?
As in, like, country of origin and stuff like that. Also all over the place.
All over the place?
Yeah.
You know when they come into the U.S.?
Why? Can I ask you why you're asking these questions?
Yeah. The senator from Northwest Georgia.
Yeah.
And not a big fan of human trafficking. Just want to make sure everything's above board here.
Yeah, so these are just recently documented travelers getting released from ICE, getting to where they need to be.
Yeah.
Recently documented travelers is quite a euphemism for illegal foreign nationals. So to give you a sense of the scene, the volunteer guy, the human trafficker in this video, is standing in the doorway of this room at the airport, not allowing the state senator to walk into it. Inside the room, a bunch of other countries' citizens all over the place. And the only people that the very skinny looking human trafficker allows in are other people who are working with him in their human trafficking operation. But the state senator, he's got to stay outside.
Airport accompaniment volunteer.
Yeah.
Team Liberty.
You didn't send him.
Yeah.
Is that a non-government organization? What is that?
Yeah.
So you receive.
Now, you can tell how standoffish he is. He doesn't really want to answer these questions at all. Is that a non-governmental organization? Yeah. And that's all he says.
How'd you get the job?
I'm a volunteer.
There's people that they get dropped off here from ICE detention with no help, so we just,
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good, man. Care if we?
Good?
Yeah. Care if we come in?
Care if we come in. So here we go. So the state senator says, do you mind if we step inside? You know, being that I represent the people of Georgia here, might be worthwhile to figure out what the heck's going on at the big airport here in Georgia. Mind if I just step inside?
Let's take a little closer look.
I mean, you can stand right there. I don't know you I don't know you very well either, so.
Yeah, just let me get a video if you don't mind.
Actually, you cannot get a video.
No.
You cannot get a video.
No, you're not allowed.
You're not allowed.
You're done.
Okay. So what you just heard. The state senator reaches down to grab, I think whoever is accompanying him is holding the camera. He reaches down to grab that camera and then picks it up. It's just, I think it's a phone. So he picks it up and he says, can I get a video? And then the people who are at the door begin freaking out. You're a woman there. Go, no. And they start panicking. They put their hands up in the air to block the view of the camera. They don't want the camera to capture anything. And at that moment, from off camera, the guy who's dressed as a soldier, so either he's some sort of military guy or he just went out to, a surplus store and he's dressing up as one. It's a stolen valor operation. He dives in there and he shoves a sitting state senator from Georgia for daring to capture this. So that state senator, Colton Moore is his name, said the man, this is the Daily Caller reporting now, this is what happens after the cameras hit here, said the man who appeared to be a soldier guarding the room eventually took his phone and stopped him from filming. In the video, individuals can be heard shouting no multiple times and saying, you're done. Quote, the room was absolutely packed with people from every continent on this planet, Moore told the Daily Caller News Foundation. When I took my phone and I reached it up above the guy to get a better view of all of the illegals in the room, that's when the chaos broke out. That's when the U.S. Army guy took the phone. It was a scrimmage between he and I in order to get the phone back. And then he proceeded to tell me to get out of there and just made a really big scene out of all of it. The whistleblower apparently told Moore that there's been an uptick of migrants traveling through the Atlanta airport in recent months. The Biden administration began flying illegals in secretive overnight trips to New York as early as August of 2021, according to the New York Post. And so they just go on with more detail about this. The airport and that NGO, Team Libertad, did not respond to the Daily Caller's request for comment about all of this. But an excellent report. The state senator sharing this video now with the public, attempting literally just to get you information on the invasion of your country. And a guy who is dressed as a U.S. government official, as a military member, is stopping American citizens from knowing what's happening with foreign nationals who are breaking our laws. Once again, maddening. Totally maddening. Meanwhile, here in the nation's capital, we keep getting reports of more and more people being killed or injured or robbed by carjackers. Carjackings are still completely out of control in D.C. A couple this week, deadly ones. A member of former President Donald Trump's administration is now in critical condition after his family said he was shot during a deadly night of carjacking in Washington, D.C. Fox News with the report here. Mike Gill is his name. He worked at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission during the Trump administration, according to his LinkedIn profile. He was attacked on Monday evening. According to Fox 5, Gill's family confirmed the incident occurred in the 900 block of K Street Northwest around 5:45. Well, that's like right now, 2 nights ago, 5:45 in the evening in the nation's capital. The suspect allegedly entered Gill's car, shot him, and dashed off. In a statement to Fox, a spokesperson for Gill called him an amazing husband, father, friend, and a colleague. Mike is an amazing husband, father, friend, and colleague. He has a wonderful sense of humor. No matter the situation, he makes friends with everyone. He's always looking for opportunities to bring people together and make them feel included and loved, the spokesperson said. And they go on to talk about he's got 3 kids and he's a good person and he was just subjected to something truly awful. Metropolitan Police Department officials said that Gill's carjacking incident was one of the many incidents in a recent violent string of armed carjackings across all of D.C. and Maryland. Just 2 hours later, around 7 p.m. Monday night, police confirmed to Fox that the same gunman attempted to carjack another person nearby. About 10 minutes later, police say the gunman approached 2 people on the sidewalk. He demanded their vehicle at gunpoint. The suspect allegedly shot one man before stealing his car, a 2016 Chrysler 200, and drove off. Authorities confirmed to Fox 5 that that man, who was shot, died at a nearby hospital following the shooting. This guy was on a rampage that night. And there's a man who's dead. That man's name is Alberto Vasquez Jr., 35 years old. His mother confirmed that to NBC Washington this week. She said that, quote, they gave up the keys, and for whatever reason, the guy still shot him and ended up killing my son. Here in the nation's capital. So everyone's being affected by this. Everybody. Living in D.C. Doesn't matter where you come from, what neighborhood you live in, the carjackings. Freaking people out. Now, yesterday in D.C., government officials held a hearing on this subject, on all these carjackings, trying to get to the bottom of why they're happening and what can be done to stop them. And among them was the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Matthew Graves, was there. And if this doesn't tell you everything, he was wearing a mask for the hearing. He had one of these stupid COVID masks on his face during the hearing because he is such a tool, this dude. Is that the right word? It's probably the most FCC eligible word. He's a tool. And he's blaming everybody else for this, He what was it last year or the year prior? He had 70% of all arrests he didn't prosecute. It's his job to do it. He just refused to. Meanwhile, he's destroying the lives of January 6th people. If you protested on January 6th, sorry, you're going to be crushed by the federal government because of Matthew Graves. He's very busy with that. But carjacking and stuff, no, not that big of a deal. Here's Matthew Graves again blaming everyone else.
Everybody arrested on a felony is held for a day, and in some cases, if it's over a weekend, 2 days before they are presented. No one is immediately out before the paperwork literally dries. We know with violent felonies, because we put the numbers up, that the overwhelming number of those people are charged, right? We make the decision when they're presented to charge them with at least an offense. Then what happens next is we have to make a decision about whether we're going to seek their pretrial detention. In our office with violent felonies, people that are carrying illegal firearms, we typically do. They are then entitled to a detention hearing where the judge gets to decide. That happens within roughly 3 days of their initial appearance. In a lot of offenses, unfortunately, particularly offenses that don't involve actual violence, just possessing illegal firearms, the judges make the decision to release them at that point. So the person is held roughly maximally 4 to 5 days during that period. Then they're back out in the street. Now, I understand the concern coming from the community. It feels like this person was just arrested for something that was pretty serious and they are back out in the street and there's no accountability. The system that we have in D.C. presumes that people are going to be released pending trial. There is accountability. They have been charged. They will one day face trial, but they are back out in the street. So that's what people are seeing.
Total disaster. So Matthew Graves passing the buck in this atrocity. Also, remember, a lot of these are young people. These are like kids that are like 14, 15 years old who are stealing these cars. They're doing it over and over. So normally that would be the the responsibility of the D.C. Attorney General, Brian Schwab. Here he is.
We as a city and a community need to be much more focused on prevention and surrounding young people and their families with resources if we want to be safer in the long run. We cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it.
So we can't enforce the law. Enforcing the law is not the way to stop this. We need more hugs. That's what we need. This is insanity. This is insane. And these guys are in charge, and guess what's happening to America's capital? Here's a D.C. parent by the name of Kevin McGilly. He was fostering a child who was arrested for carjacking, and he watched as that kid was released right back into the public.
We have let this virus spread, and you have to shut it down, and that involves stopping the spread of this problem. So I mean, no offense to anybody on the stage, but I reached out to my new council member when he was elected, to the Attorney General in the fall of 2022, and I warned them. I said, I see this, it's in my house, right? And I see more and more kids being affected by this. This is about to explode, and you're gonna have to take very significant action. And with all due respect, exactly what I predicted happened. 950 carjackings last year. We've already had about 50, so we're below, but still on pace for over 500 this year. It's not being treated as the crisis that it is. And it requires suppression. I'm sorry, but you got to stop it from spreading before you can fix the underlying problem.
So this is a guy who's fostering these children, and he identifies the problem, and he says, you've got to have consequences for this. They've got to know that there will be consequences for this. Because if there aren't, the consequences for the rest of us are in some cases deadly. And there are families in D.C. that are experiencing that, unfortunately, yet again this very week. Joe Biden is finally set to visit East Palestine, Ohio, to prevent a campaign derailment. You know, just got to take care of that little problem. He promised he would go. Coringe was asked today, why is he now going? Why did it take so long? He's been on vacation for 40% of his presidency. Here's her answer.
East Palestine, why did the administration decide that things have, I guess, coalesced and it's now the time for President Biden to go?
Well, the air quality's finally improved enough to allow him to be there.
So the mayor and community leaders invited the president to meet with East Palestine residents and also assess the recovery progress that's been...
Didn't the mayor just say today that he doesn't want him there until maybe after his presidency, when he's on his book tour?
Going on for some time now, as you all know. And so the president had always said that he would go when it is most helpful to the community.
Oh, yeah, it's about the community.
Invitation, obviously, very recent, and the current status of the recovery, we felt that the time was right. Again, we got an invitation from the mayor and community leaders.
Yeah, the election's in November. We felt the timing was right. If we could knock this out early enough, you might not ask us about it anymore. So we'd get that over with. Yeah, imagine the advanced work they're doing right now, trying to find the one person in East Palestine that won't throw something at Biden. Coming up next, the great one, Mark Levin.